Imagine closing your eyes. No sound, no light, no warmth, no cold. Not even the feeling that time is passing. Only a silence so complete that nothing can be separated from anything else. Then you open your eyes. Stars appear. Bodies move. Light splits from shadow. Birth stands beside death. The world arrives as contrast. And this is the question. How does an undivided silence become a universe of opposites? Lao-Tzu described this mystery in one of the most compressed lines in ancient philosophy. The Tao gives birth to one. One gives birth to two. But what is this two? Is it a battle between light and darkness? A war between matter and spirit? A split between the real and the unreal? Or is it something subtler? Something more like a stage and its backstage? A visible world where events happen, and an unseen depth where meaning is reorganized. This is not a proof of mysticism, and it is not an attempt to replace physics with spirituality. It is a disciplined thought experiment. Tonight, we look at reality through three lenses: the Taoist lens of yin and yang, the symbolic mirror of the Ra material, and the geometric lens of P, T, Q. Three languages, one question. Is the world we measure only one face of something deeper? In the previous chapter, we approached the silent origin. Lao-Tzu called it the Tao, the unnamed source before division. Modern physics, in a very different language, often searches for deep symmetry, a state before the familiar distinctions of the world fully appear. These are not the same claim, but they touch the same intuition. Before the many, there may be a more complete one. But we do not live in that stillness. We live in a world of direction, before and after, here and there, self and other, light and shadow, life and death. The silent one has unfolded into a world of contrast. And this is why Lao-Tzu's line matters. One gives birth to two, not because reality breaks into enemies, but because experience requires distinction. A note can only be heard against silence. A shape can only appear against background. A breath exists only because inhaling and exhaling are not the same movement. This is the first visual key. Reality may not divide like a stone being split apart. It may unfold like a coin. One object, two faces. You cannot hold only the front of a coin. The back is not somewhere else. It is the hidden side of the same thing. This is also how Taoist thought often treats yin and yang, not as good and evil, not as two forces trying to erase each other, but as complementary movements, stillness and motion, receiving and extending, night and day, the tide rising, the tide falling. Each side exists because the other side completes the rhythm. Lao-Tzu also gives us another pair: being and non-being. Non-being is not simple emptiness. Being is not a trick that appears from nowhere. Non-being is the silent background. Being is the visible emergence. A bowl is useful because of the empty space within it. A door can open because the wall is not complete. In this sense, the visible world is not false, but it may not be complete. It may be the appearing face of a deeper whole. Behind what can be measured, there may be a background that ordinary perception does not directly capture. To explore this image, we now turn carefully to a very different source: the Law of One, also known as the Ra material. This text is controversial. It comes from channeling claims. It is not accepted as empirical science. So in this film, we do not use it as evidence. We use it as symbolic language, a strange mirror placed beside philosophy and geometry. In that text, reality is described through two complementary domains. The text names them space-time and time-space. But instead of repeating those terms again and again, let us translate them into images. Space-time is the outer stage of events. It is the world where bodies move, where clocks advance, where causes unfold, where consequences become visible. On this stage, you cannot pause the scene. A word is spoken. A door is closed. A wound is received. A decision leaves a trace. This is the measurable world. The world of planets, bodies, clocks, actions, and consequences. But time-space is described as something different. Not another planet. Not a hidden room in the sky. More like the inner backstage of meaning. After the event has happened, consciousness returns to it. In memory. In dream. In regret. In understanding. Here, time is no longer only a river pushing forward. It becomes more like a landscape that can be revisited. The stage shows what happened. The backstage asks what it meant. This is why the image matters. Outer reality is not denied. The event was real. The wound was real. The consequence was real. But meaning does not finish on the stage. It continues backstage. And here, an ancient Taoist image and a modern mystical symbol seem to echo each other. Yin and yang. Being and non-being. Outer stage and inner backstage. Different traditions, different levels of reliability, different kinds of claims, but one shared visual intuition. Reality may have two faces. The physical world is real. Pain is real. Love is real. Death is real. Choice is real. But real does not necessarily mean complete. Now we can ask, can this two-faced image be translated into geometry? This is where PTQ becomes useful, not as proof of the raw material, not as proof of Taoist philosophy, but as a geometric language for projection. Imagine a three-dimensional object casting a two-dimensional shadow on a wall. The shadow is real. You can measure its length. You can trace its movement. You can predict how it changes. But the shadow is not the full object. Its thickness does not appear. Its depth does not appear. Its hidden angles do not appear. The wall receives only one face of a larger structure. In a similar visual analogy, the observable world may be like a projected face of a deeper geometry. The real observable sector is what appears on the wall of measurement. The hidden quaternionic directions are not ghosts. They are not automatically consciousness. They are hidden degrees of freedom that do not pass directly into ordinary observation. This is the safer way to say it. The visible world is not false. It is a projection, and every projection may leave a trace of what did not fully appear. In PTQ language, this trace can be represented by epsilon. But epsilon is not magic. It is not a substance, and it is not evidence that thought directly changes space-time. A better image is light passing through a prism. When the alignment is perfect, the light passes through as one. No split is visible. No separate colors appear. The system remains close to an undivided state. But if the prism tilts by even the smallest amount, something changes. The white light begins to separate. A spectrum appears. A trace is left by the act of projection. This is how we can visualize epsilon, not as a mystical force, but as a tiny geometric offset between the deeper structure and the face that becomes observable. When epsilon approaches zero, the two faces are not yet clearly separated. When epsilon is not zero, the projection leaves a residual difference. The visible and the hidden begin to diverge. The one begins to appear as two. This gives us a geometric shadow of Lao Tzu's sentence. One gives birth to two, not as a slogan, not as a proof, but as a visual model. A deeper whole is projected into an observable face, and something of the whole remains outside the projection. Now the most delicate question arrives. If reality has an outer stage and an inner backstage, where does consciousness stand? We must be careful. Consciousness does not need to control the geometry of the universe in order to matter. It does not need to turn the cosmic prism by force. It does not need to rewrite epsilon. Its role may be quieter, more intimate. Consciousness stands at the boundary where event becomes meaning. Something happens on the outer stage. A loss, a failure, a fear, a wound. But what it becomes inside us is not mechanically fixed. The same fear can become control or understanding. The same pain can become resentment or compassion. The same unknown can become a threat or a calling. Consciousness is not necessarily the author of the whole cosmic script, but it is a chooser within the scene. And because the scene is incomplete, choice has weight. If we saw everything from the beginning, choice would collapse into calculation. If every outcome were already transparent, courage would lose its meaning. If nothing were hidden, trust would be unnecessary. The visible world gives us a stage. The unseen background preserves mystery, and consciousness stands between them, deciding what kind of being it will become. This may be the deepest meaning of freedom. Not unlimited control, but meaningful response under incomplete knowledge. Not domination over reality, but participation in a world larger than what can be measured. For a long time, science and spirituality have separated sharply on the question of consciousness. Science often treats consciousness as an emergent process of the brain. Spiritual traditions often treat consciousness as fundamental, even cosmic. One side fears losing rigor, the other fears losing soul. But perhaps we do not need to choose too quickly. Perhaps the physical world is fully real, but not necessarily the whole of reality. Perhaps the inner world is meaningful, but not automatically a physical force. Perhaps quaternionic geometry cannot be equated with consciousness. Yet it can still give us a language for asking better questions. In this picture, reality is not a cold wall, it is a translucent door. On this side of the door is the world we can measure, the body, the clock, the consequence, the physical event. On the other side is a deeper background we do not yet fully understand. Memory, meaning, possibility, and the hidden dimensions of experience. We do not stand outside this door, we stand before it, every day. When we act, we enter the visible world. When we remember, interpret, forgive, or choose again, we touch the hidden side. This does not make us gods, it makes us participants. We are shaped by the projected world, but through consciousness, we also shape our response to it. Maybe this is why the one becomes two, not to trap life inside illusion, but to create the distance in which meaning can appear. A stage for events, a backstage for transformation, a door between them, and a conscious being standing at the threshold. In the next chapter, we go further. Laozi writes, 2 gives birth to 3. 3 gives birth to the 10,000 things. If reality has 2 faces, then what creates form? Why do galaxies spiral? Why do snowflakes crystallize? Why does music find harmony? Beyond duality, there must be organization, a third principle, energy, information, structure, resonance. Next time, we follow the trace from division into pattern, the resonance of the universe, and the geometry that may weave the 10,000 things.